Okay. Hi, everyone who just started watching. We're talking about how to marry your career with a bunch of educational options as you grow. So growing at your job, but also growing as with formal education. And I was just how I've done that in my career. So I started with 2015 to 2019. And in 2020, it was the pandemic. I think a lot of us struggled there, right? We had either some people lost jobs, some people, the jobs changed, a bunch of things changed. That was when I was graduating from my master's program. So that was very tricky because, okay, I went back to school. I started this job where they said, you don't have enough of this. So I went to get those things. But then now I can't have a job. So I gather all this learning and I can't, quote unquote, use it yet. So that's where learning things like how to make your own project from your classes really helps because you can, if you are able to use a class as an internship or a class as an independent study, you can then leverage the result of that, put it in your portfolio and say, okay, maybe this was not a work experience, but I made this thing from scratch and it's not necessarily if you are in data science, you know, the iris data set in Python. It's not the iris data set. Maybe I collected my own NBA data and then I cleaned it and then I made this dashboard and then I'm telling you why I did it and what I'm observing. So all of that is, you're sort of using the things you gather from that educational experience to drive your next job. It's all like becoming connected. And then, so long story short, 2020 was a jumble of a bunch of things, including getting a degree. But that's also where I met Auntie Kim because I went and did this program, which for me, another reason, another consideration, I wanted to join this program because they had connection to jobs. At this point, I had these skills. So I was going to the program. Yes, I was learning, but I was really there for the networking. So I used that as an opportunity to more network than, you know, hands-on study. And this is something that is really underrated. A bunch of schools have not just classes like, you know, maybe if you want a Python class to learn Python. A lot of schools have career offices and people don't use them as much. If you are able to be the friend of the people in that career services office, you can go to events for free. You can get tickets to conferences for cheap or free because you're a student. So it allows you to not necessarily, I went here to advance myself so that I have an MS on my name, but also I get to make connections while I'm moving towards that degree. And then by the time I leave, I have some leads as well. So that was but if you're watching the recording, that was a short story. But if you have been here before the recording, that was sort of my 9-year journey all the way to now. And the reason I ended at 2021 in this slide is because that was the last time I did formal education while I was doing a job. Right now, most of my time is I learn by myself. So I'm going to pause here and let Auntie Kim go and tell her at the end for questions. So covered sort of my side of the story. And
I just needed to find my cord so it doesn't cut off in the middle of the meeting. That would
good idea.
Okay. We don't want that to happen.
No.
At any rate, thank you for sharing your story, Sia. I'm gonna share screen and share a little bit about my story. My story is actually a lot more convoluted than Sia's. I actually started in 2013. So 2013, I think that might have been a year or two after the phrase or the job title data science was created. So I am going to do a little 5-slide presentation on my background, educational wise, some steps I do differently, got a little graphic for that. And I will be starting it really soon. The slideshow. Let's just hope it does. Okay, fantastic. Got that working. Now let's just share screen. If you have any questions, feel free to post them in the chat. We're going to leave a lot of time for questions and answers. You can unmute yourself and ask any question you want, and we will be happy to address those questions. So let me just make sure I pull up the right screen. And for whatever reason, my presentation is not coming up as an option. So let me cancel and let me do it again and see if it comes up. Okay, this is very strange. It's still not coming up. All right, let's go to window. There we go. All right. Okay, if everybody can see my screen, if someone can give me a thumbs up, that would be great. Thank you. Okay, so again, as I mentioned before, I'm Kimberly Deas. I'm a MS PhD candidate in healthcare informatics. I'm at Rutgers University. Just want to put it out there. Rutgers has been absolutely wonderful for me, even though it's taken me about 6 years to finish because I work full time and I teach on the side as well. So it kind of takes a little longer. It's a great program. I'm in healthcare informatics. The PhD program actually ended with my class. So now if you would like to study healthcare informatics at Rutgers, you will have to do so as a doctorate and health informatics student, but you'll still get access to the same fabulous professors. There are a couple different hats. So right now I'm working for a major organization as a chemical informaticist, but my career prior to that, health informaticist, health data scientist, a bunch of different jobs. So I'm just gonna go ahead and get started with the presentation. So who am I? I mentioned again, healthcare informatics PhD. Got a kind of weird background. I originally planned to actually go to medical school and found some success. I blew the MCAT out the water. But by the time I kind of got myself together educationally, I had a family and I chose my family. That's really the short story. I put my career on the back burner, so to speak, which may or may not have been a good idea because now I am divorced, but that's a whole other conversation. Just keeping it real for y'all. But I made it, so it's all good. Anyway, so you can see, I got a different background. That religion, Eastern philosophy major really opened my mind to different cultures and different people. It was really a great foundation, quite frankly. It comes up in practically every interview I've had since then, either school or work. People are very curious about the religion, Eastern philosophy. I get the Darwinism versus creationism, and my answer is usually both. Darwin was just on a different time scale than God was. I'm just saying. I don't really know if that works, but anyway. Okay, so what have I done career-wise? I've done a number of things. High school STEM teacher, lab tech, and chemist. That's mostly what I did, when I had a family. It was after that I decided to move up the scale. And for me, I never fooled myself into thinking I could have it all, whatever that means. It's really been difficult. And you need a village. So you need a professional village, you need a personal village. It's a challenge. So I've been a lab manager, lab director, public health data scientist, blah, blah, blah. You see it's all on the slide. And we can make these slides available if you want, because I'm going to provide some information other than just talking about myself. So I'm actually a person that really loves hats. I wear a lot of hats, pun intended, love hats. And so that's who I am. Now let's get to why you are here. So this is a breakdown of, I guess it started in 2012, of how I got from there to here, where I've essentially quadrupled my salary. That's a real number. It was not overnight, but it is real. And, kind of to the point where I started, with the lab background, begging people to work on a job, volunteering to work in a lab. There was just nowhere to go unless I wanted a PhD in a STEM area like physics or chemistry or whatever. And I didn't want to do that for some other different reasons, mainly the job market. So my personal advice, just throwing this out here, if someone were interested in chemistry or physics or whatever, I say pair that with a clinical degree so you can have a job. That's just me. So whether it's pharmacy or nursing or whatever, you can keep your interest in physics, but if you want to eat on a regular basis, the postdoc situation and adjunct, professors, it's a rough way to go, but if that's what you want to do, happy to put you in contact with some folks who can help you along that path. Just wasn't what I wanted to do, but different strokes for different folks. Okay, so I started along in 2012. My ex-husband's a software engineer. And he suggested, after seeing me trying to get a job and not having any success in the lab, why don't you learn how to program? So he thought Java would be a good idea. It took me a year to get through that Java class. And there were many moments, you know, you guys seen the meme of the monkey throwing the computer out the window. Well, I'm the monkey throwing the laptop off the desk. I did that a lot. It literally took me a year to get through the class. But what it also did when I finally got through the class was it gave me the confidence to know that there's nothing that I couldn't learn if I put my mind to it. Java at the time, and I don't know if that's still the case, it might be, is the hardest programming language ever, okay? At least to me, coming again from a scientific background. So taking Java let me know, and getting through it after a year, let me know I can do this. And it was an amazing confidence booster. So during that year, I was at Georgetown, I think, volunteering in a lab, hoping to get a job. And I learned Python. I took a course at Georgetown, took Python. I took an online bioinformatics class, which unfortunately isn't offered anymore. And then I relocated to Texas because I decided I wanted to become a PhD student. So when I got there, I got a job as a bioinformatics intern. So that was my first real data title where I could kind of build from there. So if you look from 2012, let me go to the far right corner. So if you look from 2012 to 2018, now obviously I've advanced since then, and I should probably expand this slide. But I went from a bioinformatics intern to a senior data analyst in about 5 years. And again, it didn't have to be that long. A lot of it was just not having any direction, not having an organization like BlackTIDES with, you know, experienced professionals to kind of help me get there. Still kind of, data was kind of still being worked out. So that'll be switched back over to what courses, because it's probably what you're interested in. Now, I did a lot of online courses, and because I often worked at a university, my courses were free. So a lot of that was on purpose. You know, free classes, I got student loan debt, you know, just trying to manage it all with my new life in Texas. So then I start taking courses toward a PhD at University of Texas Health Science Center. Did great, blew out the water, straight A student, got along really great with my classmates. The interactions with the professors was a little different because I'm the same age or older than they are. And some of the things that I might have tolerated as a 20-something-year-old working in a PhD group, auntie ain't having that. So I ended up having to look for some different options educationally, and was able to find some respect and dignity and straight A student for the most part at Rutgers University. So sometimes you just got to move on to a better situation. But in the meantime, I took classes in informatics. I took statistics for medicine. Now, also keep in mind that I'm in healthcare, so I'm very deliberate about clinical and healthcare and medical terminology and things like that. So those are the types of courses that I enrolled in. So by 2014, I was working as let's go to 2015. Because in 2014, I was, you know, doing the graduate research assistant thing. Like I said, blew out the water and realized that I was needing to find someplace else to go. I became a data coordinator at a hospital, again, clinical setting, and these are the courses that I took. So I want to stop right here and pause and talk about when it comes to education. Now, everyone has their own viewpoints about what that should look like in terms of should you focus, should you be a generalist? One of the things that all of these layoffs have taught me, or that I've observed, is that the people who are specialized seem to have better luck in the job market than people who are just generalists. So what do I mean by specialized? I mean financial industry, education industry, I mean healthcare industry. Specialization means, you know, what kind of data are you used to analyzing? Because it used to be that people said data is data. That's not true. So give you an example of that. When I'm looking at a cancer data set, and let's say there's some missing values, say for dosage that was given for treatment of ovarian cancer, you can't just throw out the missing patients, right? That's not going to work. You also can't impute a mean or an average. That's probably not going to work either, right? So the approach that you would take, say, if I were looking at packages that were not being delivered from Amazon versus patients who didn't get their proper dosage of chemotherapy, not the same thing. So that's where having a concentration is really, really important. So that's why I kind of always emphasize that. So now we go up to 2016. I'm taking some more classes. At this point, I transferred to Rutgers University. And so a lot of the courses you see here, where it says other related, those are all the courses that I took. Actually, let me tell you what I did in 2016. I did something a little different. So I started my PhD program, but then I also started taking courses toward a certificate in health information technology. And my thought at that point was, I really want to work in a hospital setting, and it's all about certifications. So some of you may be familiar with certifications like RHIA, Registered Health Information Analyst, I think it is, or health information technologist. Those are all certifications given by an organization called AHIMA, and they are almost always required if you want to work in a healthcare setting. So in addition to working, in addition to full-time as a data analyst, in addition to being a part-time PhD student, I was also a part-time student in health information technology, again, with the goal of getting a certification, because I'm all about, let me learn as much as I can. I've seen firsthand what it looks like when people don't have medical terminology background, but yet work in a clinical setting. It literally can lead to death or morbidities. And so the thing I always say, have your stuff together when it comes to whatever area that you're in. If you're a finance person, maybe think about working in financial data analyst, maybe think about taking some finance classes. If you're working finance at any organization, Amazon or Walmart, might be helpful for you to have some finance classes, because when you talk about things that Sia mentioned, sometimes it's all about, you have to justify why you deserve this promotion. And it's nice to go in there with a list. Okay, well, I took this class, I did this. So those are all things that can kind of help you along your path. Okay, so we're going to move on to 2017. So you can see I'm still taking programming classes on the side, in addition to my PhD classes, in addition to my health IT classes. But what it's doing is it's giving me a whole lot of expertise to the point where now I have a lot of options where it comes to employment, even in a bad economy. I probably get 2 or 3, inquiries a day. Hey, I got a job open. Do you want to apply? That is a wonderful place to be in. And I consider it a blessing, not something to brag about, but it came about because on the back end, I really stacked up on building my expertise. And that's what all of these courses are about. Now, with that, could I have gotten here without all these courses? Probably. I'm going to be honest. There are people who can move with a 2-year degree and make $300,000 at Google. More power to them. As a Black woman in a field that's 3% Black female, I know I can't roll like that. So I don't roll like that. So it's a personal choice. But I always say, get the maximum degree that, 1, you can afford, and that 2, you're interested in pursuing. Don't just do it to be doing it. Because when you want to do a PhD, that can't be about, well, I got to make sure I get paid. That's got to be about blood, sweat, and tears and writing. And it's a lot, right? You got to really want it beyond getting paid. But it will open opportunities. So want to be real clear about that. All right. So now beyond 2018, I still take classes. I'm now a senior informaticist and have been in the field now 10 years. So I'm happy to have survived 10 years because it's been kind of rough. But that's where having a village comes in. And that's where an organization like BlackTIDES comes in. There have been many times I've had to go to BlackTIDES and to our BlackTIDES mentors. And I want to shout them out. Dr. Marshall and Pierre Dubois, and they're both on LinkedIn. And they are been absolutely amazing mentors to BlackTIDES. And you just, in this field, you're going to need some mentorship, okay? I don't care how far you get, you're going to need to be able to lean on someone for some support. Okay, so let's go on to what I would do differently. So this would have been a shorter path. So this is me at Georgetown, working for free in the lab, praying that the grant comes through. And I love working in the lab, right? I actually really miss it because, you're up and down, you're in and out, and there's just always something going on. Whereas with the computer, it's just kind of, I'm just standing here all day, or sitting here all day, I should say, or standing or sitting. I got that standing desk thing going. So this is what I would do differently, which would shortcut. Now, when I estimate in my head how long this would take, this would be about 3 years. So my path took 10, and now I'm also raising a kid who has, done well, graduated college and done well. So I had other things going on. But I think when I look at this path now and how I would do it today, this shouldn't take more than 3 years, okay? So with that said, I'm trying to get out of the lab. And so what I would have done differently, again, coming from STEM, I would have mastered Excel, okay? I cannot emphasize how important that is. And there was a point in the last 3 or 4 years where I was just like, Excel, oh, nobody using Excel. Well, that's not true anymore. Every organization I've ever worked at has Microsoft Office, which means by default, they have Excel. Excel is the way that we exchange data from one place to another, right? That's almost always how you exchange data. With that said, Excel has limitations. I think it's 32,000 rows or something like that. And then you have to move on to something like XML or JSON or at more advanced levels. But just coming in, master Excel. So I talk about intermediate to advanced, and that means things like pivot tables and graphs. You can actually do machine learning, artificial intelligence in Excel now. So that's how far it's kind of come. The other thing I would suggest is access. So again, I'm talking, you have no background in programming, you want to get into the field, you have a STEM degree. What do? Master Excel and Master Access. Now, why do I say Access? Well, that's because the back end of Access is a programming language called SQL. So if you look at an Access, if you open up Access, you can see where it gives you an option to actually look at the code that's creating what you're seeing on the front end. So that's why I say start with Excel, Master Access, and then you'll also get a little SQL flavor in there. Then I talk about a whole lot of networking and tenacity. Yes, all of that. And so these are some of the job titles you could be eligible for: data coordinator, data analyst. Now, I understand that when you have been here, you don't really want to be down here. And I get that. But if I had been adverse to taking a few steps back to taking a data coordinator position, you might remember in that path that I showed you, I had been a data coordinator, I wouldn't be here. Every time I got a job that had data in it, it boosted my value, it boosted my opportunities. And so I was at a point where I was just willing to do whatever, right? I'm the person who, I remember I'd gone home for a summer. Senior year, I was studying chemistry at UNC Charlotte. I went home for the summer. I came back broke, and it's 2 weeks before classes start, and I'm broke. So I walk across the street to the grocery store, and I took a job for 2 weeks, and I had already had a degree and did what I had to do to get what I needed to get done. Now, that's just me, and I understand, no diss, but this generation, y'all kind of different. And what I'm suggesting is be open to maybe taking a step back. If you really want this data career, and it's not happening because, quite frankly, all the not mega. What's it called? Facebook now? Not mega. Meta. All the Meta people, all the Twitter people, all of those folks that got laid off are now kind of top of mind for these new jobs. And there's not a lot left over for those who maybe didn't go to top schools or work at top companies. You might need to take a step back. It's temporary. That's kind of how I look at it. So anyway, moving on. So as a data analyst and data coordinator, kind of the things you can do if you are if you have Excel and if you have Access. Now, I probably would adjust this a little bit because now I'm starting to see where people are looking for data analysts that know Spark. And I'm like, okay, that's a bit far. Typically, data analysts need things like Excel and maybe Python or SAS or R. But now it's like I'm seeing data engineering task in a data analyst job. So just be careful. So this is kind of fluid, like the data titles, and I think Sia alluded to this, they're kind of fluid. So I went from there, add some stats in SQL, real SQL, like MySQL or PostgreSQL, beginner SAS, Python, R. Now you're ready to move on to a senior data analyst, data viz, specialist, data scientist, informaticist, and this is typically the salary range. So in a lot of ways, this was created, I think I created this right at the beginning of the pandemic. I think now it might be a little different, okay? So I probably want to go back and adjust this slide. This was 3 years ago. And I think a lot of this has changed in 3 years. The market is just really different. But I think the path is the same, right? So when I say path, I mean the things that are in white. So if you're new, you start with Excel, then you go on to stats and SQL and R, Python, or SAS, and then you go on to machine learning. So it's the things in white. That's the order that would be a good way to prepare yourself for a data career. And I think I got one more slide. Actually, no, I'm done. That's it. So if anyone has any questions they want to pose to us, you can feel free to unmute yourself. I'm going to stop sharing screen. And we are ready to take some questions for anyone that has them.
So there are some in the chat. I was reading them, so I'm going to read some of them for you so you have a chance to answer.
Okay.
Let's see. The first one, data engineering stack. What would you recommend?
So see, that must be for you because you know I'm not a data engineer.
I know, but
okay.
I answered it in the chat, but
oh, you did? Okay, well, just read your answer.
I'm just saying, like, if you have extra to say.
I have absolutely nothing to add other than data engineering is not for me. That's what I got to add.
Okay. That's how I feel, exactly the opposite. Like, it's for me. Okay, the next question from Carla. Can individuals who didn't graduate with a technical or STEM bachelor's degree still pursue a PhD or master's in data or tech?
So I'll answer this one. So I actually am a data mentor for the MS in Data Science program at Howard. I spent the summer teaching introductory or working with Dr. A. And if you want to look into that program at Howard, I would highly recommend it. It is amazing. Dr. A is amazing. She's the director of the program. So if you're considering a program, they're taking applications, want to go ahead and shout that out. just a good family of individuals. But I bring that up because the cohort that I worked with were all students who did not have STEM degrees. Now, let me just keep this real. This will be a trial by fire. If you're not used to thinking scientifically, that will be something you have to learn and master in order, no, not master, we're not using that word no more. Learn and conquer in order to become a good data scientist or data analyst or whatever your goal is. So you absolutely can pursue the program. The question is things you would have to do to make yourself attractive to a PhD program. And so I think that's something maybe we could take a deeper dive in a future webinar, Sia, because I think it requires some in-depth conversation. We never really talk a lot about coming from non-STEM, right? And that would be something to I think we should think about, because most of the people come from STEM, right? That's for whatever reason, that's how it worked. But there probably does need to be something we could do to specifically address non-STEM, because it's definitely not the same path, right? There are some things that you have in common, but I think one of the first things, like for example, I think for someone that's non-STEM, I would suggest you learn a language called SPSS first, right? So it's a really basic, super simple programming language, but it will get your mind in the thinking, the ways you have to learn to think in order to learn R or Python, etc. So my suggestion would be to learn SPSS, well, learn Excel and then learn SPSS. Get those down. Because as I understand it, SPSS, and I recommended this to a couple people who never programmed before. They were STEM, though they never programmed, but I suggested SPSS, and they all said it helped them on board into that programming way of thinking. So yeah, it can definitely be done. It's that you'll do some extra steps, right? Probably have to do an internship, probably have to reach out to some folks and ask if you can, sit in on their meetings or whatever. There's a lot of different networking I think you would have to do. You have to get real creative. But I think, see, that's something we should think about doing for a future, specifically focused on non-technical backgrounds. I think we should think about that. You want to add anything?
Yeah, I did respond some in the chat that another option that I have seen people take is trying out some community college classes, because one, it gives you a chance to like experiment and see which things you're good at and which things you have the capacity to take on, because it's less of a financial commitment, time commitment compared to a 4-year degree. And then you can latch on to, let's say you start with Excel, and then you're like, I really, really like this. You do a analyst certificate. If you feel like you want to extend that, there's a lot of states, more and more states, where if you finish, I think it's like 2 years of community college, you can do the 4-year degree for free. Yeah. For a state, like your really good state schools. There's a bunch of good state schools. So saves you money. It allows you to take time when thinking through what you want to do before you do, like you fully commit. And even if you take a class and you do not completely, say, finish a certificate, you still learn something. You still learn how you learn. And my grandpa used to say that school is where you go how to learn how you learn, because you get exposed to a bunch of different ways. So it also like a good way to be like, okay, maybe this is the best thing for me to learn. This is the avenue I want to go in. And then the other thing, I also dropped an article for someone who I think did it really well, is whatever you have experience in something. I'm assuming I'm not talking to a student, but even if I'm talking to a student, you have some version of life where you are really capable in a specific subject or in an industry. A friend of mine, Natalie Davis, who I love, you can follow her everywhere. She used to be in retail for like 15 years, and she transitioned into software engineering because she was able to say, hey, I know these problems that the people at the line face or the people in the stocking room face. And then that way people were able to give her a chance to catch up on the code, because the hard stuff is knowing the business, and then knowing the code is actually easier. So it's doable. It is a little bit harder because you have to convince people to give you more of a chance than, Like I had a math degree and I still had to convince people. So yeah, doable, but challenging. But yes, we should talk about it. Yeah.
And I just want to add something to what Sia said about leveraging an area you already know. Let's say if you're working retail at Walmart, right? And you're like, I really want to do, a data analyst job. One of the things that I cannot emphasize more than anything is you absolutely have to have a portfolio, a GitHub page, a blog, a LinkedIn post, something of what you are doing to learn. Okay. And specifically with the Walmart example, there's plenty of retail data sets out there. And I mentioned this in a post on LinkedIn that I shared a couple weeks ago. I did a presentation. I was interviewing at a company for educational data consultant job. And so I was going to be analyzing data having to do with the low income schools that this particular nonprofit was working with. So I found some data online about those very schools that I knew was in their cohort based on what they had told me, was able to present an actual, something that became useful that we actually were able to build upon once I started working there. They hired me on the spot. Okay, so granted, I've been an educator, I've been a teacher, high school teacher, science teacher, I've been a college professor. So I did have the education background, but I really wanted to wow them in the interview. And I can tell you that not a lot of people do that. There's often a moment in an interview where people say, well, is there anything you'd like to say? And what I always say, well, I have something I'd like to share. And then you pop out your presentation, and that's just a real good way to hit it out the park and stand out above everybody else. So to Sia's point, you can absolutely, every organization these days has data. Either find that data set, because a lot of organizations are sharing things on Kaggle, or find something like that data set, analyze it, put it in a blog, put it in a GitHub page, keep a Google Colab notebook that people can go look at and see your code and share it. That's people want to see what you're working with these days.
Yeah, and that goes for jobs and school, like even if you're applying to school.
And actually, let me bring up the school thing, because I did cold emails, and I actually did a cold email a couple days ago about a job / postdoc experience with a woman who's doing research that I'm interested in. And we're communicating back and forth, trying to see what we can set up. So you'd be surprised, when I sent the email, I was like, okay, she's probably got 1,000 emails. She's considered a superstar in chemical informatics. So I'm like, okay, I'm never going to hear from her again. She actually reached out to me in like an hour. So that points to networking, the importance of networking. And again, when you create your blog or whatever, that's great for jobs, but it's absolutely great for these programs you're applying to, especially if you don't have the background. You can say, hey, well, I don't have the experience, but I do have this blog that I can share. So it works both ways, but don't be afraid to cold email someone. Like you have an area, everybody has something that they're interested in. Find something you're interested in. If you want to pursue it professionally, find the people that do that professionally. And if it's academic, for me, went to PubMed or PubChem in this case to find publications that this woman had done, was really impressed with her work. I knew she had really great relationships with her students. I did my research after my little situation in Houston, lesson learned. And now we are communicating. So you never know what's going to happen. So don't be afraid to send an email, just a cold email out. You'd be surprised at people that will respond to you and give you some guidance. That's really important with the networking. Okay, see. So is there any other question does anyone have? Did we cover everything? You want to talk about the immigration situation? Because you know more about it than I do.
Yeah. So I mentioned before, I'm an immigrant. I actually had, I'm not in the US anymore because of immigration. So I want to send all of my, how do I say? All of my good wishes to you. And also you just responded. So from my understanding, I thought you were in the US, but now that you corrected this, I would encourage you, I was just typing it, to apply to Correlation One. We used to work there, not anymore, but I would say as far as boot camps go, it is one of the best, and their applications are open right now. So let me just
It's a really great boot camp. They actually helped
Yeah.
me fine tune my data teaching skills, which was great. It's a great boot camp. If you can get in, now it's super competitive, but if you can get in there, that'll definitely open a lot of doors. They have a lot of contacts with people in industry, and it's just a great program. I mean, it's very well put together in terms of everything you learn. It's practical. There's that project you do at the end. One group of students created a company based on their project. I mean, it's really, really great. So if you can get correlation 1, that would be great. And if you don't get it the first time, I would keep trying. Excuse me.
Yeah, I did not get in the first time. Yes. Keep trying.
It's always about keep trying.
Yes. Success story. I did not get in the first time.
I did not know that.
And then I got in, and then I became a TA. So you can absolutely. And they have more than one. So there's a data skills for all. I apply to that. When the data engineering one, they also have a data engineering one. If that's of interest, apply to that. They have like 5 now. So just be on the lookout. It's free. We did not say that at the beginning. It is free. So there is that. And they connect you to employers. So the way they can fund the program is employer partners who look for talent from the people who graduate. Yeah. So, but yeah, I'm sending you all of the best. And I'm really sorry.
All right, I'm going to drop my LinkedIn information. I'm all about leveraging whatever I've been able to create and build and sharing with people who are coming up behind me or coming up with me, however you want to word it. Oops, that's not the right link. Hang on a second. So let me just put that in the chat. Meanwhile, does anyone have any more questions or comments? You can unmute yourself.
Also, I'm on LinkedIn, but I don't go there a lot. So if I give it to you and you message me, it might be. I will still post it, but you're more likely to find me on the used to be Bird app than.
And I'm going to be found on LinkedIn because that used to be Bird app is just wow. So I'm there a little bit, but not like I'm on LinkedIn. Let me just put it that way. So does anyone have any other questions? So I want to address some questions that I typically get in the absence of someone having one. One of the things that comes up a lot, and I alluded to this a little bit before, is how much education do you need, right? And that's really a tough question because I have there's what I see happening, there's what I wish would happen, and then there's just reality, okay? And it would be great if you could get a 2-year degree in software engineering and just take a couple boot camps, get great certifications, and go to the top of Meta. But the reality is I am a Black woman in a very unique space. And so I navigate myself accordingly. I have never been able to come in with, if there was a minimum required, that's never been a way for me to get through any door at any point in my entire life. Okay. So that's just how it worked out for me. Now I'm Generation X. So, I understand that things are different. And that's not to say that you can't. Like I would never, ever, ever say that. What I'm saying is that advanced degrees have opened up doors for me. And quite frankly, I graduated from Georgetown. Advanced degrees from a top institution has also opened up doors for me. That's just the way the world works, okay? With that said, does that mean that you can't do it? I would never say can't. But I can say that having advanced degrees, certainly at least a master's, right? So if people were to ask me, what's the absolute minimum degree a data professional wants to have? I would say if you want to advance in the field and you are a marginalized person or from a marginalized group or a woman, and especially if you're both, I would say get at least a master's. That's just the way the system is built, right? Like I see other people that can have a 2-year degree. I remember once I was working in pharma, and there was a lady that was there who had a 2-year degree. She was there the same amount of time. There were 2 leads in our group. There was the Caucasian lady with the 2-year degree, and then there was the African-American lady with the master's from College Park. They made the same money. They were at the same level, and they started at the same time. Now that's anecdotal, but it could never have been the reverse. Let's just be clear. Okay. So at some point you just have to look at it for what it is. And the reality is that the more education experience you have, the better your opportunities can be. Is it unsurmountable? I would never say it's insurmountable, but I like to eat well. I like my checks to be on time, and I like to have opportunity. And for me, education and experience is what has created those things for me. Free masters. So I actually work in an organization right now where if I go back to like, they go back to school, they will pay for my education. A lot of institutions are like that, especially academic institutions. Now they only pay for you to go part-time, but if you're working full-time, you probably don't want to, work full-time, go to school full-time anyway. So there absolutely are ways to get your classes paid for. I don't know that they necessarily are free, right? Because at the master's level, they typically aren't. When I got my first master's in chemistry, that was completely free. I worked in a lab. That one I got from Georgetown, student loans. Okay, that's how that one got paid for. So I'm not advising the student loan thing either. So let me be clear, okay, because that has changed as well. What I would say though is work for an employer that will pay for your master's. That's what I would say. So that kind of goes to, you really want to be a data analyst, but you got a job as a data coordinator. They will pay for you to get your master's, right? If you work, actually a lot of organizations will pay, a lot of nonprofits will pay, hospitals will pay, like in healthcare, right? So hospitals, academic institutions, they will pay for you to get your master's. Now you have to give them some time back, but the bottom line is that you absolutely can get a master's for free. And I would say for anybody, get at least a master's, no matter what your background is, okay? Allow yourself to have opportunities. A master's will get you a lot of opportunities. You do not need a doctorate to be a data scientist. Now that's where I would say I would kind of draw a line. The only reason I'm really doing a PhD is because I know I want to work with other students who want to get their PhD, and you have to have a PhD in order to do that, right? So I absolutely want to work with students on their dissertation projects and things like that. So that's where, the PhD is required. It also opens some other doors, and I'm happy to have those. But my main motivation was working with students, but not as a faculty member, okay, as an adjunct. Let me be clear about how I want to do that, because that's a whole other conversation. Okay, so we are coming up on 7:30. I'm sorry, so did you want to go?
I was just going to add also, if you're a teaching assistant, I got my degree for free because I applied to be a teaching assistant. So that was like, you give your time back, but they give you a small stipend, and then you study for free, and you maybe teach a class, or you help a teacher grade, whatever. So yeah, look into that as well.
And Brandon brings up a good point. I get emails all the time through my Rutgers. Hey, I need a student to work certain hours a week,
Exactly.
And a lot of these positions are analyzing data. So that's a way you can leverage your, start building your resume, and for either getting into school, getting in a graduate program, or just for getting a job. All righty. So thank you, Brandon, for that comment. And we are coming up on 7:30. Yeah, I think it's tough being the last administration made things really, really bad, which was really, really unfortunate. Okay, that's just, and unfortunately, Biden didn't reverse a lot of what the other guy did. So that's why it's unfortunately like that. But I would just keep trying. I don't think it's people think it's easy. I guess it's easier if you're in the United States, but these days, the way the market is working, it's just not easy at all. And so I want to encourage everyone that's at this meeting to consider, join us on our Slack. We post obviously information about webinars like this, but we also are starting to build a job board and share information. Like I said, I get information all the time, and I'm happy to refer people who, are qualified for positions, and I've done that. So it really is about networking. They say that 70% of, a lot of positions are gained from networking, and that is very much true. And so a lot of you are like, well, why is she talking so much about networking? Because ultimately you want to go to school so you can get a job, okay? These same things actually that you do to get the job actually will get you in a program, because I had to show coding skills. I had to show, my experience in the field. They didn't just roll out a red carpet. I had to actually do some things to get into my informatics program. And I think that's true for a lot of data programs. They want to see, what's that GitHub page look like? Do you have a Tableau public website? So it is a lot like getting a job, I think, Sia, doing data as a career. They really are evaluating things that I got evaluated with looking for a job. I don't know what your experience was.
I was evaluated every single time. And sometimes I had to do like an English aptitude test, which was like, sure. But yeah, even while applying to school, I think I showed a couple of like, hey, I can do this. Here's my project. Yeah.
I had to do a lot. And I guess at the higher levels, it makes sense. But the other thing I want to emphasize as we're wrapping up is that everybody doesn't want to be a data scientist. There are some people who are happy to be a data analyst. There are some people who are happy to be a data coordinator. If your aspirations aren't data scientist, data analyst, then you may be happy, or it might work just well, just fine for you to go to a 2-year college. Remember, we don't want to be incurring a whole bunch of debt if we don't have to. Get a couple of certifications and call it a day. That could work too. So I always want to talk about that because I don't want to make it seem like data science is or data is the end all be all. It's not. There's some people, there's a whole continuum, and I think I've been through all of them: data coordinator, informatics intern, analyst, senior analyst. If you get to senior analyst and you're good at that spot, that's okay. I mean, I feel like now the data profession is just so competitive and everybody doesn't want to go for what they think is the top, right? And I think for the top of the data career pyramid, I would say, is data engineering, from a prestige point of view. But there's a whole continuum of jobs in between, intern and data engineering that you can fill and you can be fulfilled in, and quite frankly, that you can make good money, right? You don't have to be, data scientist to make 6 figures. I made 6 figures as a data analyst. So it really just depends. So I would encourage you to, use our tips as they need to. Feel free to, field any questions with us. But more importantly, know that the field is wide open. There's any level of different positions that you can fulfill, from the 2-year degree all the way to the PhD. And we are here to help guide you in that direction should you have any additional questions. So with that, we're about 1 minute over. I like to be a stickler for staying on time. I want to thank everybody for joining us. Everyone who participated today is going to be getting a survey in the next week or so. We're going to ask that you please give us some feedback. We're always trying to improve upon the things that we present to our audience and to people that follow us, and more importantly, to people that might be interested in joining our cause of educating Black data professionals in the field. Again, thank you so much for joining us. If you have any additional questions, please feel free. You can either reach out to DJ Sequel, is Sia's nickname, on Twitter. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn, and also stay tuned to our LinkedIn page and Twitter pages for future events coming up this year, including Black and Data Week, which will be held in February of this year. So with that, I want to say thank you again for participating and for joining us. Please complete the survey when you get it, and everybody be safe out there and have a great evening. Bye-bye.